A high-capacity converged network is the fundamental building block of a smart ecosystem.
You're listening to Smart Thinking, a podcast from WSP. I'm Matthew Marson, taking you on a journey into smart buildings. In this podcast, we're bringing it all together and talking about converged networks. Joining me live from Melbourne is Roneel Singh, a technical director at WSP and regional head of the technology systems discipline. His team focuses on providing technology and integration consultancy services. He's a leader in the field and has had exposure to a range of local and international projects which use technology and innovation to focus on the holistic solution. Roneel is frequently involved in the development of integrated technology strategies and master plans in the planning stages of major precincts that ensure technology systems infrastructure is correctly planned, staged, budgeted and designed. A big welcome and first question for you, Roneel, is what is a smart building and why should we care?
Smart building is a building that focuses on enhancing the experience of the user in the building and providing a functional outcome or functional benefit to the owner, the occupier and the tenant. Why should we care? I guess it's quite important that we get the most of our assets and we maximise the benefits, not only from a monetary standpoint, but also from a user experience standpoint in everything we do in the built form.
What are converged networks and why would they be preferred to the traditional way of designing one?
Traditionally, buildings had multiple networks that had different services running on them. Now, these were proprietary networks, they were siloed and they were locked away. As the IP revolution or the Internet of Things revolution has happened, you traditionally end up in a building today with up to 7, 8, maybe more different networks. The danger there is that the networks are essentially unprotected. They're using systems that are not IT grade or enterprise grade. Therefore, you have a myriad of different systems and technologies on the solution. A converged network takes all of that together and puts it into an enterprise network or essentially an engineering network that would then have the smart infrastructure running on it. It removes silos, it removes additional cost, and it makes a freeway essentially for all of the services or the technology platforms to work on. I think the key term there would be that you're creating a smart ecosystem to allow all of the communication to happen on an open, standards-based and clearly protected network.
Now that sounds a little counterintuitive. I can understand the benefits of it being cheaper from not having so many networks being run in tandem, but if I bring everything together, does that not expose my business to being hacked through something like an IoT fish tank?
No, it doesn't, because what it traditionally does is if you look at the security or the BMS or other networks that have been put in place, very few networks are centralized, the same grade as your IT enterprise network would be. So the idea of pulling everything together into one converged solution enables you to actually put in multiple levels of firewalls. It allows you to put in multiple grades of security or have your enterprise security control all the ins, all the outs. You actually can then set up your system so that you've got layers of protection and then have essentially penetration testing on that full solution as opposed to separate silo-based solutions that generally in a building or a smart building provide the backdoor entry.
How far do you think we are from this being a standard specification for a building?
Depending on what part of the world you look at, if you're looking at the Middle East, the digital or the converged network is essentially mandatory. If you're looking at the US, Europe, and possibly Australia, there are different grades of converged networks. I think in Australia at the moment and in the Asia Pacific region, converged network is the norm. How it's deployed and how it's set up to be a true open source ecosystem is still being debated. So I think we're probably a couple of years away from most specifications requesting a converged network just for the engineering services, if not converged with the enterprise services.
Okay, but you're certainly seeing it becoming the norm.
Very much so. We consider that as the norm in 2018 to ensure that there's a converged secure network for all your services platforms in a base building rollout.
Are there any client examples that you'd be able to share with me?
Sure. So there are multiple client examples at the moment that we're working through, from large precinct style developments to some very bespoke hospital developments or healthcare developments. So the Cancer Centre in Sydney Adventist Hospital has enabled us to provide a fully converged network to allow all aspects of technology to be rolled out into a room that's quite a specialist room with quite specialist technology solutions that have been deployed to enhance multidisciplinary meetings and treatment solutions.
Have you got an example use case that you'd be able to share?
The two use cases I can share with you, one being the cancer centre, the Sydney Adventist Cancer Centre room. What was enabled was that we ensured that there was a converged network from a hardware and a communications platform that allowed us to allowed us to put any technology on top of it as long as there was a set of rules that allowed that communication to occur. So we set a set of benchmarking rules, which is standard open protocol IP rules, and then we release that specification to any of the trades or services or technologies that need to sit over the top. A similar thing happened in a precinct scenario with Yagan Square, which is a large open space in WA, which is their city civic forecourt. We were able to create a converged network to allow every service on the site, including their IT, their Wi-Fi, their signage, their performance systems, and security and whatnot, to sit on a single converged network to then be monitored and controlled in a unified manner so that the precinct was smart. And in the future, as you add things to that precinct, it's in a very controlled and managed way.
When clients ask me about creating a smart building, one of the first things that we always talk about is creating that base layer of infrastructure. I just wanted to get your opinion on how important you think that is.
It is essential. It is the one element that won't be changed when the tenants change or you do a light refresh of a building. The core infrastructure is like road system, I guess, because if you don't plan that properly, you will spend every year extending, duplicating, or multiplying that road system. To get your pipe, your system, and your network right in infrastructure allows you to then add on what you want from an IoT point of view, whether it's wired, it's wireless, or whatnot, to be quite seamless and to be always integrated and not siloed.
If you think about how quickly technology changes, how are you able to know what the right infrastructure is, not knowing what the future holds?
Infrastructure hasn't changed in terms of the cables, the cores. There's a very slow progression in change. It is the technology on the top that actually sees more change and more diversity. The core there should always be people, process, and technology. So if you focus on the people and the process and what you're trying to achieve, the technology that you put over the top of it can change over time or every year if you need to. The base backbone of the infrastructure will be quite similar as long as it's reliable, it's resilient, and it's redundant.
I suppose in the same example, the analogy of the road network, the roads haven't changed, but the cars that go on top of them are certainly a lot fancier.
They're fancier, they're faster, and they're autonomous nowadays. And you need to take a very high-level helicopter view to be able to see what you think the changes are and try to be slightly forward-thinking. The infrastructure itself in a total cost of construction is very minute, so doubling even the cost of the infrastructure shouldn't really impact your total cost of construction significantly, but the benefits will be very significant if you do that.
When someone's thinking about a smart building, and in particular their core infrastructure, what would your top tips be?
Top tips would be to ensure that you're treating the infrastructure as a casino or a bank would for their critical network. It is a critical piece of infrastructure. It needs to be thought and designed in that manner. And then it needs to be there to have a real framework around it so any IoT platform or any system can fall on top of it. So it is a smart ecosystem that you're trying to create where things are all literally plug and play.
A big thanks there to Roneel Singh, the Regional Head of Technology Systems, joining us from Melbourne. In our next episode, Jay Ratton joins us to talk about the experience of being in a smart stadium. If something in this episode has piqued your interest, then have a chat with us. Email smart@wsp.com. You've been listening to Smart Thinking, a podcast from WSP. I'm Matthew Marson, and thanks for listening.